I don't have a reporter right now, so maybe afterwards, that'd be all right. Okay. I'm not going anywhere.
Hello. Welcome to the People's Town Hall for Pete Sessions, Congressional District 32. If you'll turn off your phone, Mr. Leader. To get underway tonight, we're going to let Larry Weiner lead us in the pledge to both flags, the U.S. and Texas.
What do you think? I think we'll keep that, right? And if, for the U.S. pledge, if all you veterans would join me in saluting the flag and hand over your heart for the rest of us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee. Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right, welcome. My name is Russell Ramsland. I run the Park Cities Preston Hollow Tea Party and Leadership Forum. And other than that, the only thing I had to recommend myself is that I'm out of jail and the bail is low, so I'm always grateful. A couple of quick announcements before we get started tonight. First, there is a collection bucket, I understand, in the back for anyone that has a little too much paper money in their pocket and needs to get rid of some. That'll help defray the cost of the hall. And you're going to hear tonight on the Benghazi portion from Captain Alan Clark. He has a couple of books in the back, and I'll tell you a little more about it when I introduce him. And 10% of the proceeds of those books he's also giving to us to help defray the cost of the hall. All right, let's get underway. I wanted to set the tone for what we're doing here tonight because I want everybody to sort of get on the same page. And it's really a framework for sort of understanding and even participating in the event tonight. Essentially, under the American experiment, we are all business owners. And we own a business called the United States of America. Like all businesses, we have employees. In this case, they're elected officials, national, state, local, their employees, and the bureaucrats beneath them. And like all businesses, as owners and employers, we have an obligation to conduct a sit-down review with each of our employees from time to time to remind them what the company goals are, give them constructive feedback on how we think they're doing in terms of protecting and furthering those goals, where they're falling short, and to give them some direction on what they need to do in order to be doing a better job. I think all smart and rational business owners are actually intensely interested in doing this for their employees because they're really interested in seeing their employees succeed, and that's really the spirit that we're doing here. I would also mention that during the course of the review, it's often beneficial to get the employees' feedback because the employee sort of brings a certain on-the-ground level knowledge of what's going on in his particular area, and it's beneficial to the employer to hear it. Tonight's meeting is essentially that collective employer review, and we probably, I believe, are not going to have the congressman here tonight. I don't know if anyone from his office is here to speak on his behalf. But in any event, we're going to go ahead and have the review. We have been trying to leave messages and contact the congressman for quite a while. We've pinned up notices in his cubicle, so to speak. And I think that he is probably tied up in Washington doing his job, and that's fine. We're delighted about that. We did offer the possibility of a remote link, and we did offer the possibility of having representatives here. So we have tried, but we're going to have a meeting anyway, because no business can really exist for very long if the employees don't have some accountability to the employer. So we're going to have a review. We're going to tape this review so that there's no doubt about what was discussed, and we're going to supply this review to our employee and hope that he will watch it and absorb the information. Now, we hope it will convey our expectations, and we hope it will help him to better execute his duties as an employee of our company, supporting our company goals. Because if he chooses not to, then of course we all have further decisions to make, and that's just sort of how it works. Okay. Let's talk a minute so that we're all on the same page about what is the company goal, because this is really critically important. The first thing an employer has to do is to remind the employee of the company goals. In this case, for simplicity's sake, I think it can be boiled down into one overarching goal, and that is the preservation and the protection of the rule of law. That is our company goal. And sometimes you need to remind the employee why the goal is there and why it's important. In this case, it's a very simple and straightforward explanation. Throughout history, there have really only been two accepted philosophies as to how humans should interact with each other. One is win-lose, and the other is win-win. Now, for over about 1 million years, there was essentially only one philosophy, and that was the win-lose I referred to, otherwise known as a zero-sum game. What I win, you lose. I attack your castle, I get all your treasury, I get all your people to come as slaves, and if you're really lucky, I leave you to watch your castle burning to the ground. It's sort of how history went for a long, long time. Win-lose. Today we have another word for that embodiment of the zero-sum game, and that word is redistribution. It's actually based on nothing more, though, than this old, very primitive mindset of win-lose. Now, there was a recent addition to this primitive mindset, a new philosophy, if you would, that was added in 1776. And that's a radically different philosophy. And it's a philosophy of free markets or capitalism. And in this new philosophy, both parties to the transaction are actually relatively unfettered in their ability to enter into or not enter into a transaction. They are free to choose. And they have to be free because in this philosophy, both parties have to feel like they got a win. That's the basis. So our founding fathers tried to embody this philosophy for the first time when they created our Constitution with a limited government. And that limited government is composed of some employees. And the rule of law applies to everyone equally, so that all transactions take place on a level playing field, so to speak. Nobody has an inherent upper hand, and no government is allowed to decree winners and losers. If we like the idea of America, then we like the idea of the rule of law, and therefore its protection and preservation are the company's ultimate goal. So, let's talk about the plan for the review today. You always talk about with the employee what the review's about. As with all employee review, time is not unlimited, so we made the decision to focus on 4 issues that we felt were most illustrative of the perils to the company goals. There are lots of others, and we could go far greater depth on each topic, but since we have to make progress tonight, we picked 4. And usually in a review, you do spend some time, a fair amount of time in fact, telling the employee where he's doing well. And we therefore do want to point out that the employee appears to be doing very well on Second Amendment issues as well as right to life issues. But time prevents us from dwelling on those a whole lot, and since the employee's not here, it's not something we're going to spend a lot of time on, but to be fair, we do want to point those out and express gratitude. Our plan then is to spend a few minutes outlining the perils and threats that are presented in each one of these areas, and then have you have an opportunity, because you all are also employers, you're part of the collective employers here, to come forward to the microphone. And if you want to make comments or ask questions, that would be great, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Now keep in mind, the goal here is to be constructive. This is an employee review. We may not be unanimous in our agreement about what all that is, but hopefully by the time we're done, we'll have sent a coherent message. But the huge issue that underlies each of tonight's employee review topics is the rapid dissolution that we are experiencing in this country today of the rule of law. It is simply going away. Furthermore, the Republican leadership has exhibited a failure to appreciate, we believe, this very high level of threat that has now evolved as a result of some of their inaction. And we want to talk about what we think now needs to be done about it. So, a couple of ground rules, and we'll get started. We really are trying to end here 9:15, something like that. So when you're addressing things on these topics, we would ask that you try to limit the time it takes to get to your question, and try to limit, if you just want to make a comment, that's great too, but we want to be brief because there may be several people who want to make comments. We could discuss a lot of topics. We could talk about, the problem of whether it's the budget or the continuing resolution or the debt ceiling. And the problem that we're always being told is, well, it's next time that we're going to do something. It's next time that we're going to do something. Next time we're going to fight. And it kind of ends up with the Charlie Brown School of Government. And it's sort of a philosophy of he who fights and runs away lives to run away another day. It's just not really what we want to do. So let's not get into that too much, but I did want to point out that we're going to try to just keep it to these 4 topics. Wade Miller, are you here this evening? I don't know if you had a chance to make it. Okay. I need to know that. So if you could frame your question in about 10 seconds or so, we'll get on with it. We will try to monitor and address the questions. We can only express our own employer view on it. However, we can't speak for the employee and don't mean to be speaking for the employee. But there it is. So the first topic is going to be presented by Captain Alan Clark. I want to tell you a little bit about him. He was in the West Point class of 1963. He was a military intelligence officer assigned to Army Special Forces in Vietnam, was involved in covert operations in Cambodia, operated under an assumed name. He received the Silver Star for gallantry in action for an attack on his Green Beret camp on June 17, 1967, in which he became a double-leg amputee. He served Texas and Governor Bill Clements as a special assistant for administration. He was a Republican candidate for state treasurer in 1982. He served in the Veterans of America in the administration of President George H.W. Bush as Assistant Secretary for Veterans Liaison and Director of the National Cemetery System. He currently has a lay ministry to assist military and veterans heal from post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's www.combatfaith.com. He's the author of his Wartime and Healing Story and of a second book on Vietnam, its war history and personal stories. And as I said, both of those will be available in the back at the conclusion. He has made a very extensive study of Benghazi. He has a wonderful group of people he can call on to help him in this study. And I think you will find it very, very interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Honorable Alan Clark.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be your guest tonight to present on this topic. I only wear my medals, not in any sense of trying to be any expression of vainglorious whatever about my military service, but as a reminder that those of us that have been under fire in the military at all, but especially under fire since the beginning of this nation, and during the Revolutionary War and all the way up to the present, to include our people that had a fight on their hands at Benghazi, are people that have sacrificed and they have suffered and they have bled and they have died for certain freedoms in this land and others. And I am in that category also. I lived, by the grace of God, on the battlefield 46 years ago. But it's very important to continue to work for your country. I'm 71 and I don't have to be doing anything anymore. You know, I'm retired. I've lived my life tremendously, and I have a lot of friends, I have plenty to do, but I cannot not be involved in politics and public service. And when I started getting into a bunch of issues relative to these Islamists and this Benghazi thing, I just had to go to work on it. Okay, that's all there is to it. Bottom line. I believe that a select committee should be established in support of House Resolution 36, submitted by Congressman Frank Wolf of Virginia. I like to kind of work on a military staff study format, facts bearing on the issue. What was the U.S. footprint in Benghazi? The Special Mission Compound, SMC, Ambassador Chris Stevens' residence, along with 6 other state employees who bunked in a separate building. Tactical operations, communication with cameras all around the 8-acre estate there, which was in Benghazi, was in a separate 3rd building. A 2nd employee, Smith, of the 6 that were there with the ambassador, was killed in the residence. Stevens was apparently taken to a hospital. He was probably already dead from smoke inhalation. Smith died. He was the Air Force veteran that handled the communication for the ambassador and lived in the residence. There was one of these 5 Department of State security people in the residence. There were 2 more in the Tactical Operations Center, and there were 2 in the bunkhouse, as you might call it. I mean, it was a home, it was a house. So there were 7 Americans on the campus originally. The annex, and it is very possible that this SMC was a cover operation for the annex operation, which was a CIA operation a mile away. Now, by the way, I have no access to any classified information. Everything that I've discovered, I've gotten from what you call open source, which means that you get it off the internet, people find out things and send it to me and so forth. So there's nothing here that's secret information of any kind. If you research it enough, you can find the same stuff. The annex, it was a CIA operation 1 mile away. There were 4 large warehouse-like buildings 1 mile away. It was well fortified. On or about 20 CIA employees worked there. Former SEAL Woods was there. Benghazi, pre-attack. What was going on there in pre-attack? This was an embattled city where the revolution for Libya started to begin with, full of militias, not all friendly to the United States. June 4th of 2012, high-level Libyan was killed in Pakistan by a CIA drone. June 6, 2012, this American compound, the SMC, the wall was attacked with an explosion. It was blamed on the group desiring release of this blind sheikh who was involved in 1993 as in prison in the United States. June 11, 2012, the British representative was attacked in an ambush. The Brits closed up and left Benghazi. The events before the assault, June 6, 2012, possibly, I'm sorry, that's wrong, it's September 6th, possibly a Libyan ship delivered arms to Turkey. September 9th, 2012, the Cairo embassy was assaulted. The demands were made in this demonstration for a release of the blind sheikh. September 11th, that day of the attack, the Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri, called for Libyans to avenge the killing of this man killed by the drone a week before. He was Abu Yahya al-Libi in Pakistan, up in that Waziristan sanctuary. September 11th, Stevens only got there the day before. He was only going to stay in Benghazi for 5 days total. That day, in the afternoon, he met with a Libyan shipping official and the Turkish consul. The attack, as soon as it began, it was reported directly out of the Tactical Operations Center all the way back to Tripoli and back through the chain of command, the State Department, all over Washington, that it was a terrorist attack. In no way, shape, or form was it just a demonstration. It was a military operation, well planned and executed. The residence was set on fire. Stevens and Smith and one Department of State Security to go to the safe haven in the residence. The other buildings were assaulted. Tremendous assault. A lot of people with AK-47s, RPGs all over the campus. The annex people came eventually and rescued the security agents. They retrieved Smith's body, but they could not find Ambassador Stevens. There was an annex assault. The group came, about 10 of them from the annex, to rescue the people at the residence. The group convoyed back to the annex. 7 volunteers had taken off from Tripoli within an hour or two of the original assault. They were hung up at a Libyan Benghazi airport for 3 hours because they could not get the money to pay a bribe. The people on the tarmac required a bribe before they let them go over to the Benghazi compound. So they finally arrived from Tripoli. This included the former SEAL, Glenn Doherty. They had to pay a bribe. It was delayed 3 hours. The pre-planned mortar barrage on the annex. And when you have a mortar barrage, you set up your aiming stakes. I was wounded by a mortar in Vietnam. The enemy was setting up the night before. You got to have it pre-planned. It's not something you just walk up, set your thing up, and start firing for effect, especially at dark. The annex, the pre-planned mortar barrage, kills Doherty and Woods, the 2 SEALs that were working for the CIA, on the roof of the annex. As soon as that happened, the annex basically got shut down. All remaining state and CIA departed for Tripoli out of the Benghazi airport. Major problem 1 relates to leadership. The security of the compound was miserable. The setup was a covert operation. State Department Accountability Review Board was worthless, part of the cover-up. Military support was all ordered to stand down, all up and down. There's about 5 opportunities for somebody to do something and go to the rescue of these people that were Americans under attack and under assault. In the military, at my base camp, we had a patrol that I was not on. 2 of 3 Americans were killed. We do not leave our bodies out in the open. The enemy ambushed a second group of Americans that went out to retrieve the bodies from my camp. Within the day of the ambush, the enemy put them out in the open, split their chests down the middle, and that's how my medic that saved my life had to identify the people. Military support was all ordered to stand down all the way down the chain of command. The people that came from Tripoli were volunteers that left from Tripoli to go the 1 hour, 400 miles to Benghazi. A select committee can nail down the lack of management oversight by the state senior leaders. Multiple questions need to be answered. The current committee by Darrell Issa is one of 5 committees that have a little bit of responsibility for finding out what's going on. He's not getting to the heart of the issues. Hillary Clinton is responsible for the major problem 1 of leadership. Senior officials in state did not take proper precautions to secure the weapons collection and smuggling facility in Benghazi, and that's what it was. Better do that. By the way, it was not a consulate per se, but a covert state CIA operations center with a storage annex. The consulate label was part of the cover story for the covert operation. Such ops are called black ops. I was involved with a black ops operation in Vietnam, which means there's a cover story to what they're actually doing. And if questioned, the cover story is played back to the questioner over and over and over again, and that's what the administration is doing. If you break cover and you're part of the operation, you go to jail, to say the least. I'm 46 years away from mine. I guess the statute of limitations is over. Special operations, and I have a resource page, special operations people, about 600 of them, they know what's going on, what didn't go on, what should have gone on. They have submitted a significant amount of Q&A questions without answers from the current administration anywhere down the line. I mean, if anybody wants to find out the questions that I've collected from my research, they can ask me. I've got about 50 of them, and they haven't all been answered at all, much less questioned by Darrell, by Congressman Issa's committee, or anybody else yet. I have the information on the military response, which was not sent from anywhere. It wasn't sent from Andrews. It wasn't sent from Aviano, Italy. It wasn't sent from Croatia, where they had some Delta Force people. It wasn't sent from Rota, Spain, where they had Marines. And I think possibly they had some special ops people in Tripoli who were not ordered to go. It was volunteers that went. 2 Joint Special Operations people and 5 more CIA people went from Tripoli to help the annex. Okay, the major problem number 2. Covert arms, major problem number 2. Major problem number 1 is basically all anybody's focusing on. What we've got to focus on with this administration is getting to the heart of the covert arms issue. Libya was packed with surface-to-air missiles. A select committee would be able to ask the questions, was there a covert finding to supply arms to Syrian rebels? If not, this was an illegal operation, which means that possibly there could be some charges of impeachment. The impeachable offense, can it be determined? Only a select committee will get to the heart of the issue on that. The Senate will quash it. The Senate doesn't want to do anything about it because the Democrats control it, obviously. One of the questions you might ask about the covert arms operation, so far only 1 CIA officer has been asked to testify. More than 1 needs to be asked to testify. And what was the actual mission? You know, a lot of things are theories out there. This covert arms thing is a theory, but it's a pretty good theory. What was the Syrian rebel breakdown? I have a source that breaks down these Syrian rebels. Related to covert arms and problem number 2, they did not, the administration does not want and did not want anyone to know about the smuggling operation, where the weapons were headed. Reportedly, a boatload went up through Syria, went to Syria through Turkey. And a big plus about this, I think they're particularly sensitive in this administration, which only a select committee can go after because the covert op was not approved, possibly. And if that be the case, it was illegal. This would have ruined Obama's day, for sure, if that come out. At the same time, there are indicators that possibly only state and CIA knew about the operation. In any event, administration still denies what was happening there relative to support for the Syrian Free Army, which we have been supporting and the Saudis have been supporting. In any event, the administration still denies what was happening relative to getting arms to this group. When anybody asks any questions about it, they deny it. Some suggest it's because they were smuggling directly to Al-Qaeda. A year ago, apparently we were not doing that. It was going to Free Syrian Army. But possibly today, Al-Qaeda subs are a part and connected with the Free Syrian Army. So who knows but what they're going to get some of the weapons. Okay. Next. Okay, some of the theories. You know, you always worry in a national presidential election about an October surprise, something that the president pulls a stunt on a week before the election to make him be a big hero. Well, there is a theory out there, and I'm not saying I go along with this one necessarily or any that I want to talk about. I'm just throwing out the theories. Only a select committee can get to them. One of the theories is that there was a possible October surprise for Obama to be reelected. He would have Stevens kidnapped and traded for the blind sheikh. A lot of information came out of President Morsi, who's in prison now, and these different attacks. They had pamphlets passed around about the blind sheikh. They wanted him released and everything. If that were to have happened, and I don't think that they plugged in, Stevens was probably not in on that deal, if that theory could have worked. But the blind sheikh would have been released out of the United States, the Muslims would have been happy, and the low information voters would have been happy because we got this great diplomat in the presidency that was doing something great. He would have been a big hero getting the ambassador back. Theory 2. Now this is a bombshell. It's a bombshell. I didn't know anything about it until a few days ago. I'm almost reticent to even talk about it. But dadgummit, we fought the Russians and the communists for decades through the Cold War. And you know, they are not our friends today, as we well know. And one of the theories that I've come up with relates to this. Russia was an indirect supporter of Syria. Iran and the Hezbollah are direct supporters of Syria. Maybe this axis of these three countries wanted to close the covert arms shipments down coming out of Benghazi and that CIA annex, so possibly the attack was sponsored by this trio. It would have been an act of war, but the U.S. leadership, of course, blamed the internet video, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They were spineless. It was a basic CIA. Any of y'all been in the military, you know what CIA means. The Al-Qaeda was eventually blamed after about a month, and there's been constant cover-up beginning before the election. Perhaps most important is this administration does not want anyone to know who really took Benghazi down. We had telegraphed our delivery of weapons to the Syrian Free Army, and Russian intelligence probably saw it. We see their stuff, they see our stuff. So the Russians, Iranians, and Assyrians were aware of what was happening, and apparently we were warned through the Turks. We didn't take it. We ignored them, so they hired some gunmen to come in and take out the Benghazi compound and the annex. We never know. People came on the grounds of the compound, had been cleaned, had been sanitized. There weren't even spent casings of shells on the campus of the compound. The little ragtag attack, which was not, supposedly just immediate demonstration and so forth, brought visibility to Benghazi, but it was a very well organized thing. And it basically put that operation out of business, which is what the Syrians and the Iranians and the Russians wanted to have happen. Of course, the attack was an act of war, but rather than react to the attack, our leadership, which I barely can call leadership, they're leadership only by title, decided to try to keep the lid on things, and they're still doing it a year later. First, the blame was the cop who made the movie, Reem Mohammed, who was the culprit. Both Hillary and Obama sent a video out to the Muslim world apologizing for the movie after the attack and saying they understood why they were rioting across the region, including Benghazi. They never retracted this. And since then, they have gone to silence except for whatever the cover story allows them to say. Break the silence, anybody that's involved, you have trouble, big trouble. And after a month or so, it was attributed to some Al-Qaeda operation. Now, the way intelligence operations work all the time, there's a cover story. Okay, this could be a cover story for us. It could be a Russian cover story. Aftermath. Shipments were disrupted for 1 year. The congressional inquiries have only focused so far on problem 1 and the state's missteps. That's why what Darrell Issa's committee is doing is not enough. The select committee can investigate problem 2, covert operation, and problem 3, who really was behind the attack. A select committee is important to expose something much more than just what happened at Benghazi and the attack on those grounds and lack of support and whatever was happening there in covert operations, because this relates to an expose of the administration's support of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Arab Springs, when I call them the Arab Winter. Because of what happened at Benghazi, we were reluctant to send support openly to the Syrian Free Army for nearly a year. It was not until all of this was pretty much in the rearview mirror that such open operations were approved this last June after Hezbollah's string of victories that turned things around for Assad. Our administration, they're going to support the Syrian Free Army. They had to go back to work. Congressional inquiries seem to have been oriented only on finding out what happened and what didn't happen at State Department and what Hillary et al. Did or did not do in regard to what we've said. The inquiries have never been bumped to the higher level to find out this kind of stuff. I've tried to paint a picture here as to why that is the case. People are reluctant and flat out scared because of how they classify this stuff. They can be imprisoned if you're related at state or CIA for breathing anything other than the cover story on this stuff, and that goes for the bigwigs that are the political appointees who are the ones that blew this thing at state, in my opinion. So while there is a much bigger play here that they covered up because it would have brought the Obama administration to its knees. If all of this stuff had started being asked in September and October before the election, I doubt that he would have been reelected, even with all those low information voters that voted for him. The investigation should be focused on these higher level issues, and with answers there, the reasons why we did not react and how this was handled became clear. As we know, Putin has been calling the shots in the Syrian situation here recently, and it now has wrested complete control there. He used the chemical situation to make peace with Obama, and in order that he fill the power vacuum created by Obama in the Middle East. This guy from Iran apparently met with Putin in preparation for his possible meeting with Obama at New York City, but it never happened, although Obama apparently tried desperately to meet with him, shake his hand. They are toying, the Russians are toying with our administration now, and we are apt to get taken to the cleaners there because they're a hell of a lot tougher than we are. Obama has no clue what's going on. Claire Lopez is a fellow at the Center for National Security. This is what she wrote. The Obama administration, deeply penetrated and influenced by Muslim Brotherhood operatives at home, decided that providing official support to Brotherhood militias and political parties in Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and Syria would fulfill the long suppressed desires of local Muslim population, regardless of whether such aspirations were supportive of or inimical to the national security imperatives of the United States and our allies, such as Israel. These populations, despite their pro-democratic minorities, overwhelmingly are anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-West, and profoundly opposed to liberal Western-style democratic systems of government. But this seemed irrelevant to the considerations of this administration that led to Benghazi and beyond. And so this erstwhile defender of the free world, the United States of America, became an arms supplier, banker, and defender to both the Muslim Brotherhood and its Al-Qaeda militia allies. They call it, as we know, the Arab Spring. My conclusions. We citizens assembled here this night request our public officials, beginning with House Rules Committee Chair Pete Sessions. And by the way, he's not my congressman. I live in Sam Johnson's district, but I'm a patriot, and I believe you got to go tell the truth wherever you can. I address this to Rules Committee Chair Pete Sessions and the other members of the House Rules Committee to schedule a floor debate and floor vote on the Congressman Wolf Resolution 36 to establish a House Select Committee to investigate the Benghazi attack. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and President Barack Obama must be held accountable not only for an egregious failure of leadership and management in Benghazi, but for the larger purpose of deriving information on the courting of the so-called moderates of the Muslim Brotherhood. I've been acquainted with Congressman Pete Sessions for almost 20 years, since before he was elected to Congress. I know him to be a loyal and patriotic man of faith, but also subject to influence by senior Republican leadership. The party line is that a select committee will cost millions, take up to 72 staffers from other committees, and take over 3 months to become working. This is scant cost when the national security of our nation is at stake. Not just what went wrong, so will not happen again, because after all, what difference does it make? Spoken by a probable future presidential candidate, but it does matter, Hillary, and it should matter to you if you care about people under your responsibility in our country. I know not where a select committee would lead, but it will put some street lights up in the darkness on the rough road laid out by this administration. Congressman Sessions and members of the Rules Committee, none of the 5 committees investigating this so far have gone as deep as my own investigation with the help of many others, and it is time to get with the program. With all due respect and attention to your re-elections next year. Even if the road leads to complicity in any of these issues, by senior Republicans, so be it. The country matters more than party. Commodore Perry said, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." And as an Army guy that plays football against Navy, I don't usually quote a Navy Commodore, but he said something really cool. "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." We are waiting for you to start your engines, House Rules Committee, led by Congressman Pete Sessions. Pete, any of his people are in the room and going to be on video. I volunteer to share my research with you. I will be a resource to you and any primary opposition. God bless you, good citizens here tonight who care about this land of the free and home of the brave, as exemplified by those Department of State security agents and the CIA responders at Benghazi. Thank you.
Now, if anyone has any questions or comments, keeping in mind this is a constructive deal, we have a microphone up here. You're welcome to come forward. Please be brief. If nobody comes forward, we'll go ahead and move to the next topic.
Russ.
That took a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, Mr. Clark, thank you so much for your patriotic service. We're grateful. I'm going to try to look at this in the two just brief sections. You had issued problem one and problem two. On the problem one, in regards to the exchange for Stevens, I've heard actual audio, which is credible, by an investigative journalist, Aaron Klein, that you can actually hear that on the night of the attacks in Benghazi, there were a group of those rebels that were saying, don't shoot, Morsi sent us. And
I've heard that.
a little bit of a question after I address part two is, what about this February 17th Brigade? I don't understand what much of that was about.
Yeah, we had, is that the question?
No, and then just part two, I haven't.
Yeah, just
said
give me
that.
one at a time. I'm not
Okay.
that fast. Let me answer the February 17th Brigade.
Yeah.
We contracted a British company on whose board Admiral Olson, who is a distinguished special operations man of the United States, serves on a board of a British company called Blue Mountain. Blue Mountain decided that they were going to have some unarmed militia at this place, and when the attack started, they bugged out, okay? But apparently they subcontracted the work out to this group, the 17th Brigade, and so whatever the name is, I got so much in my brain after 30 hours of research on this. And they apparently have Muslim Brotherhood connections, and I think that it's very important. That's another question amongst my 50, 60, or 70 questions I've derived as to why we would hire a British company, number one. Number two, why would we have allowed them to contract out to a militia that has Muslim Brotherhood connections? But I mean, believe me, I don't know that we could have trusted any militia in that country. It was such a mess.
Okay, and then in the second theory in regards to Russia, Iran, and Syria, I mean, it's already been documented that gun running was going to Syria, but there is also a larger issue at hand, which are all the oil and gas contracts that Russia held, signed by Assad before they had eventually pulled out of Syria for a little bit. And that also there's been news now that China has made deals with Kyrgyzstan, I don't know how you quite say that, in regards to oil and gas pipelines. Yeah,
Whatever, one of those stands.
Yeah. And that they've also signed contracts for oil and gas pipelines and delivery of vehicles. And if Saudi Arabia considers themselves the premier eminent driver of who they sell oil to, isn't there a larger concern on whether these oil and gas pipelines and this issue with Syria, number one, are going north or whether they're going to go west? And if we look at Saudi Arabia, they were also responsible for, I think, part of the uprising with the Chechen rebels.
You've had your 10 seconds. Excuse me, I don't mean to be rude. Let me make a couple comments about that. It's a very complex issue. Possibly some of this will come out. You're getting into big business type of stuff here when you get into these oil deals. You know, I mean, there were 11 contracts let in Iraq after the war. Only 4 went to American companies, yet it was American blood that was shed on that battlefield there. I talked to a Navy doctor from Afghanistan in a wounded warrior program one time. He talked to a village chief in an Afghan tribal area who said that, go back about 5 years, a big report came out, there's $1 trillion worth of minerals in Afghanistan, okay, and pipeline passively coming down through there also. But this Navy doctor said, the tribal chief said to him, I have sold the rights to the minerals in my tribal area to the Chinese. I was livid. And this is all part of follow the money, the trail of the money. In every single operation, it's in politics, it's people that get in politics, it's the reason they make decisions, the lobbyists and all of that kind of stuff. This one relates to if the Chinese are going to get the benefits in Afghanistan, when our troops get out in 2014, we're still losing troops. Let them bring their Chinese soldiers in, let them go outside the wire, let them get beat up and lose their eyes and lose their legs and lose their arms by IEDs. Why should we be protecting Afghanistan so that the Chinese can come in and make money? Same thing in Syria.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Regina Imburgia, and Pete Sessions is my congressman. He's very aware that I have, and we know there's more questions than there are answers. And I was watching the hearing, and those congressmen that are trying to work on this, their hands are tied. One of the things I asked Pete Sessions about was the survivors and why are they being muzzled? And he clearly said, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, that came up during the hearing.
He says he doesn't know what you're talking about.
He said he didn't know what I was talking
Yeah.
about. No, it's on tape. He's on tape that Pete says, I don't know what you're talking about, Regina, you know. And that's Wolf, you know, Representative Wolf has, and what I did was, so my question is to Pete, do you ever look at your Facebook, you know, because we've been sending you a lot of information that you don't know about, YouTubes and articles of these people talking about this, yet he's blocking it. And the one thing I like to say is, who's blocking it? Pelosi and Obama and Pete. You know, why are these people not wanting an investigation? One more thing, and I'm sorry. Everyone it broke my heart when I heard Mrs. Smith talk about her son, you know? And that was just horrible, and we all know the feeling of that, you know? It was just terrible, Mr. Woods and Mrs. Smith, you know? And one of my questions is, Pete, have you talked to those families? Have you explained to them why you're waiting all this time for an investigation? And he's worried about a little bit of money. When we know that Obama's dog was air flighted on a vacation, how much did that cost? How much money is wasted that Congress always writes off on everything. So it's very infuriating, and Pete is holding this up. It's not like a committee, it's Pete, and he is doing it, and he needs to answer, you know, why.
A couple of observations, okay, and I've never run for Congress, and I've run statewide in Texas for treasurer, but I'm well aware of a lot of national issues. The politicians in elective office are torn here, there, and everywhere. And I would not, in fairness to him or anybody else, it's very hard to keep up with every issue. I mean, he hasn't had 30 hours to spend on this, but he should have a staffer working on it. But that's why we need a select committee. Because if he doesn't know this stuff, how can the American people know it? And unless we have a select committee that focuses on that only and brings hearings to the public attention, we'll never know those answers.
Exactly.
My question is quick. I had been reported, and then I've not seen anything more about it, but it was the most disturbing for me in this whole thing, and that is that the General of North American Command apparently was going to defy orders and send his boys in, and about 5 minutes before they took off, his second in command arrested him. That's what I read an article about that. First off, I want to confirm if you know if that is accurate information, and secondly, I heard most recently reported that nobody seems to know where that general is, or at least can get access to him to report to get.
Nobody knows who is?
Where the general at North American Command, North African Command.
Oh, Ham, he left really quickly, yeah. It was reported, and there's always a cover story for stuff, it was reported that he had family medical issues. That's a good cover story to get out of the hot seat.
But I understand nobody knows where he's at. They can't seem to find him. Reporters have actually tried to track him down.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, he may still be on active duty. And if you're still on active duty, you really have a problem. You know, this 4-star admiral, the Navy one, is the one that's come out with this kidnapping theory and so forth. I haven't heard a lot about that, you know, and I read extensively the last few days.
I mean, it's just disappeared off
Yeah,
the
right.
records and everything.
You know,
Wall Street Journal
everybody-
I saw the original article that
We had
that he
people,
was going to defy orders.
we had resources, military resources all over the place that could have done something. F-16s could have flown over that. We could have had the Delta Force flown out of Croatia. We could have Marines out of Rota. We could have had, if that Special Operations Group actually was, you know, had more firepower brought in, had a group out of Andrews ready to go. And, you know, like they talked about a lot of the excuses where we didn't get country clearances. Well, our great President Ronald Reagan didn't worry about country clearances in Grenada in 1983 when he sent our troops in, okay? And, you know, if we've got a president with a spine, he will not worry about country clearances. He'll get it later on. Now, Obama didn't worry about any kind of a country clearance when he wanted to get Osama. You know, he wanted to get full attention for that. It was the I deal. I did everything, you know, I gave the order, I blah, blah, blah. He wanted plenty of attention for that, but he didn't want any attention with this unarmed predator drone, which was over that compound and the annex for about 8 hours. He didn't want the American people to see that, but he sure wouldn't have wanted them to know about a successful operation going after Osama. So don't get me hot anymore.
Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate the perspective that you have and the information that you have. We just feel like we're in the dark on this. And I have written to Congressman Sessions about the Select Committee, and I, like most people here, have gotten just the canned excuse that it costs too much money and there are too many people that would be required to do this. I find it very interesting that just came up the other day that we have lost $67 million in the IRS setup of doing Obamacare, and yet we can't put out, how much did you say was required? How many millions?
It's a few million to do this committee.
To me, I just, as a mother...
And this one's a national security issue.
Right.
You know.
And to me, as a mother, my son's life would mean something more than, well, who cares about it?
Yeah.
The other question I have for you is, do you have any information on those witnesses or those people that were there that have been given other identities?
I heard about that, and that's one of the questions that I would have selected. It's on my list of 70 questions, whatever it is, 50, 60, 70, that they have been given new identities. This book is called Under Fire, The Untold Story of Benghazi, written by Fred Burton. I bought it 10 days ago, read it within a week. It is the best book I've seen on the actual events, because he was a Department of State security official, and he has talked to a bunch of them, and they are not named. None of the people are named except Dorothy and Tyrone Woods, but he has the timeline down, and he has a lot of good information in this book, everything that was happening before, during, and after the attack and so forth, but it's non-political, I have to admit. I guess you were next over there.
Well, my name is Jim Griggs, and I thank you very much for your service and your sacrifice. I have actually two questions. The first one is, what is the theory behind the stand-down order?
Well, that's the key question. That's the $64 question. I mean, if it was a kidnapping, they want to stand down because they don't want to stop it, okay? If they're worried about clearances, you know, into Libya from this Libyan Transition Council, they want to stand down because they're chicken, okay? If they want to stand down because they're not supporting the troops in the field, that's another reason they stand down. I just personally think neither Hillary nor President Obama and the people that surround President Obama have the guts to have done what they needed to do. We were under attack in a United States of America installation, cover and overt, covert or not. Americans were under fire. They should have done something. This list on here, the questions, special operations, man, those guys, they know what's going on. They're Delta Force people, they're SEALs, they're Special Forces. They have listed all those questions that relate to the attack and the resources, who was doing what, when, and it's kind of like back Baker, you know, Senator Baker, I think it was during Iran-Contra, arms for hostages. You know, he wanted to know with President Reagan, the president in his own party, what did he know and when did he know it? That's what we need to find out about Obama, and you can only do it with the select committee. Darrell Issa cannot do it, and Pete Sessions, it's really upsetting me that he will not support this. Apparently 160 Republican congressmen, maybe even some Democrats are supporting it, and we should have it done. Why is this not getting done? I don't think it's strictly Pete Sessions. I think the leadership of the Republican Party, for whatever reason, maybe some of them are complicit, and the questions and the answers to some of these questions would get to them, and they're just not strong enough and to get to the truth, and he may have pressure from above, but it doesn't matter. Go against the grain. Be courageous and get it done anyway.
I think shipping the dog is $1,000,001, by the way. Second question I've got is on this select committee, what are the chances of one actually being able to focus on these issues you bring up, and what would be the political makeup of the committee?
A select committee?
Yeah.
You know, I don't really know. I just haven't had time to get into all those ramifications. I just want one. You know, we'll work it out later. We don't want the accountability review board that Hillary put in place. 4 of the 5 people were her people, and they did not even interview her. Okay? Now, there is an unpublished State Department accountability report that was chaired by a former Secret Service chief that's not come public yet. I don't think Darrell Issa is going to ask for that. Only a select committee would bring that to the fore and find out what the heck they found out. I bet you they found out a lot of stuff that accountability review board headed by Pickering and on Admiral Mullen, who was on the committee, he made some report back to the State Department, don't have so-and-so testify before the committee because they will not make state look good. Who cares about people looking good? I mean, that's what we're all about. We don't want people to look good. We want them to be right. Okay, over here.
Yes. I was under the impression that the embassy in Benghazi was bombed. Today it's come to my attention that Mr. Chris Stevens was raped and tortured. Could you address that?
My source tells me that photograph that was photoshopped. Okay, I have a very good source that knows a lot about this. He said that photograph was photoshopped. Whether he was abused like that, Islamist jihadists are capable of that, and they do it often. And it is possible. I do not have any confirmation one way or the other on that. Apparently, from one of my sources that I heard, a benevolent looter who came in after the attack in the residential grounds took Stevens, who had really probably already died from smoke inhalation, along with Smith, was taken to a hospital, and they tried to resuscitate him. That's all that I know.
I understand that one of the theories I heard was that they didn't fly in with rescue because Hillary and Obama had sold SAMs to Al-Qaeda rebels, and these aircraft would then be shot down. Have you heard that? Or?
Well, the whole deal was surface-to-air missiles getting scarfed up. Libya had thousands of surface-to-air missiles, and under the covert operation, they were being scarfed up, taken by the CIA and transshipped in Libyan ships to Turkey, to Jordan, etc., and into the Syrian Free Army. Now, apparently, up until when this thing all happened, we were not giving surface-to-air missiles directly to any Al-Qaeda units, okay? But today, there are Al-Qaeda units, now, just like happened in Gaza, for crying out loud. They got 20% of the vote in Gaza, the Hamas, which is a Muslim Brotherhood-inspired operation founded by them. But they came in with their AK-47s and they pushed the Palestinian Authority out. They will always come in. If we go in and support anybody in the Syrian rebel outfit, the Al-Qaeda will be the strong people because they're the ones that are the most dedicated. The secularists are not as dedicated as Muslim Brotherhood and the Al-Qaeda. The Muslim Brotherhood is strictly, quote, a political group that wants to take power through the political system. The Al-Qaeda wants it now. They both want a caliphate. They both want Sharia law. And that's why CARE and ISNA and all these organizations in the United States are very dangerous to the constitutional republic.
Well, I just see it as a red flag as a citizen that now civil air transportation to, say, London or airports that are like Paris would now be subjected more to SAM attacks if these Al-Qaeda was able.
That's no doubt. Yeah. All right. Thank you very, very much. We have 4 topics we want to cover. The next one is obviously happening in front of our very eyes in real time. You want to get down? And that happens to be defunding Obamacare. A huge topic. We don't have a lot of time, but we do want to cover some of the basics, and Carrie Kellerman is here to talk to us about that.
Hi, my name is Carrie Kellerman. I'm just one of you. I appreciate Mr. Clark and all of the information and expertise. Everything I know is everything you could know. I was able to go to a few town halls this last spring of Congressman Sessions. We would ask him questions, he would listen, and it became very clear to me after a bunch of us asked a lot of questions. Yes? Can you stand over the light so we can see your face? Yes, sir. It became clear to me after about 10-15 minutes in my first town hall when Pete said, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that, I don't know, I'll get back to you on that, that my goodness, we were getting our information someplace he wasn't, and he was getting his information someplace we weren't, because there seemed to be a large, large gap. So this is being taped for Congressman Sessions, and since he is not here tonight, I figured I would do what I would want Congressman Sessions to do were he here. So what I would like to do is what Ted Cruz said at the beginning of his marathon speech the other night is I would want Congressman Sessions to listen to us. So I'm going to ask you all some questions, and if you would say it loud enough to where I can hear, I'll repeat it into the microphone so the camera and the congressman can hear. So tell me, what do you hear is happening with Obamacare? Train wreck. Nightmare. They're going to push it through. They're going to push it through? What? Small businesses closing. Lots of small businesses closing. That's the agenda. That's the agenda. Less than 30 hours. Yet less than 30 hours for employees. Throwing the rest of us under the bus. Huge job killer. Special favors for his friends. Increases insurance premiums. 4 times the high. Yeah, exactly, yes. Long-term plan to eliminate insurance companies to get us to single payer.
Healthcare only for political left-wingers.
Healthcare only for political left-wingers.
Obamacare is not about healthcare. It's about a takeover of 1/6 of the economy.
Okay, not about healthcare. It's about the takeover of 1/6 of the national economy.
Republican establishment actually wanting Obamacare while saying that they don't want Obamacare.
Okay, Republican establishment saying they want Obamacare, saying that acting like they want, acting like they don't want it, but they do. Yeah, Larry.
No private health insurance companies in Canada. That's where they want to go here.
No private health insurance companies in Canada, where I resided for 3 years. Yes, you're right.
Insurance companies wrote the bill.
Insurance companies helped write the bill. Waivers have been granted. Many uninsured are going to be staying uninsured. AARP. I heard tonight they're going to they're going to profit $1 billion from Obamacare. AARP. Why does Congress get an exemption and we don't? Are you hearing this Congress sessions? These are your informed constituents. I'm not telling them anything, they already knew it. Go right ahead. Politicians are exempt. Unions are exempt. Big corporations. Huge tax increases.
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Okay. You guys, see, I told you I couldn't tell you anything you already know. How do you think the GOP is doing on this issue? I heard a big raspberry. They're not doing anything. Letting it ride. Pulling, I'm sorry? It's like pulling teeth.
They want the plan.
They want the plan.
They're voting tonight on the cloture vote. They aren't going to wait until tomorrow because they don't want the American people to be able to see it live on TV.
Okay, they're going to vote.
Cover tonight. They're going to pass it.
They're going to vote on cloture tonight. I heard from Ted Cruz on Mark Levin about 2 hours ago that it's scheduled for 12:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. But I don't know differently. If you've heard differently, I don't know your source.
Mark Levin gives disinformation.
I'm sorry?
Mark Levin gives disinformation.
Mark Levin gives disinformation. That was from Ted Cruz. That was Ted Cruz saying that on the Mark Levin show.
Exactly.
It was on C-SPAN that they moved the vote up? Okay, 12:30 Eastern tomorrow.
That's against the law. The rules are supposed to be, they're supposed to have 3 days to look at it before the vote.
Okay, that's against the law. They should
So
have.
they're breaking the rules.
They're supposed to have 3 days to look at the law before they vote on it. Okay, yes, sir.
Obamacare is an evil law passed by an evil Congress who shoves evil down the throats of America.
Obamacare is an evil law by an evil Congress that shoves evil down the throats of Americans. I'm sorry, go right ahead. Led by an evil president. No waiver for the middle class. We should all do nullification. What do you see as the GOP strategy in dealing with Obamacare? There is none. Attack Ted Cruz.
Stall.
Unfortunately, our legislatures are looking out for themselves and not for the country.
Okay, congressmen are looking out for themselves and not for the country. And say your point again one more time.
Well, after the hearings today and yesterday with Ted Cruz, we can see why the Republican Party cannot come up with any kind of candidates. They're still bickering amongst themselves,
Yes.
and they're not cowards.
Okay. Lack of unity, circular firing squad. Is that something that sounds familiar? No better than their constituents. They don't have a strategy. Ted. Okay, Ted Cruz is taking the heat. Okay, let me ask you this question. If I'm Congressman Pete Sessions, and you were and he was standing right here tonight, and he would ask you, how am I doing on this issue? Not very much. I'm sorry. Wasted vote. Which vote are you talking about? Okay, wasted vote in voting for Pete. Okay, he said he had to pick his battles and that Obamacare was not one of them. It seems like his moral compass has gone haywire since his divorce. Balance. There needs to be balance. You get a lot of money from political action committees. There needs to be balance. Yes? Okay, her family has been uninsured for the first time in 4 years, and what are you doing to help? Okay, what are you doing to help? Okay, moving on. You guys are great. What would you like to see done differently about the attempt to about Obamacare, about defunding it, delaying? What would you like to see done? Repeal. Every part of it repealed.
Support Ted Cruz, keep fighting.
Support Ted Cruz and keep fighting. Okay. Do you have any strategy suggestions? Specific strategy suggestions? Russ Ramsland does.
I think what they need to do, since they're going to probably pitch it right back at the House of Representatives, I think what Boehner needs to do with Pete is to pass a bill that funds the military only and send it to the Senate. Then they need to pass a bill that funds just Medicare. Send it to the Senate. Then pass and do it one at a time to make it really clear who wants to shut down the government, and it's the Senate and Obama. And the one bill you don't pass is the one that funds Obamacare.
Great strategy. It's called the ping pong. I like that one. Okay, any other comments on strategy? Yes, sir. Wait, one second. The guy standing right behind you, I'll get 2 minutes. Yes, sir.
I want to add this to the piecemeal strategy. Now, Pete Sessions' staff was yakking about adding on some kind of piecemeal immigration reform. And I'd hate to see them add a piecemeal immigration reform onto this funding reform and make that part of this piecemeal litigation and stuff that's going back.
Okay, the piecemeal approach. Okay, yes, sir.
There is a supposed request for a 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Mr. Sessions would get behind that, get it going through the Congress, get it passed. It would take care of about 95% of our problems.
What is the amendment?
Everybody in the government has to adapt to the same laws as we do.
However, if you read Mark Levin's book called The Liberty Amendments, there could be a meeting. Wait a minute, just let me finish. I got the microphone. I get to voice my opinion too. That it's an amendment convention, not a constitutional convention. The Constitution would be off the table. Yes, ma'am. In the back. Yes.
I haven't heard anybody talk about the private Federal Reserve and its collection agency, the IRS, who is the one that's going to implement this whole thing.
Okay, the IRS who's going to be implementing Obamacare.
Yes, but the question is, why are we even talking about it? Because what's unconstitutional is the private collection agency of the private IRS, which is a trust housed in Puerto Rico. It has nothing to do with the United States. The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with the United States. It's a consortium of foreign banks, and we're sitting here fighting over Obamacare, just one tentacle of it. The real issue is that taxes on the labor of Americans is totally unconstitutional. And that is the real issue.
Okay, the issue
Why
is
are we even fighting this?
the issue is the Fed, the bigger issue. Anybody else have anything else on that one? Background checks.
More oppression.
All right, so now that Pete Sessions has heard from you all are what I would call high information voters. How do I know that? Because you're here on a Thursday night. That's why I love you. Okay, so here are I'm going to give you 3 things to do, because the reason we're here is so we can do something about this, right? I'm going to give you 3 things to do that start with the letter I. All in favor say aye. All right, the first I is to stay informed. And I just would like a show of hands. Where do you get the majority of your information? When you are highly informed, where are you getting the bulk of your information? A show of hands if it's cable news, a cable news network. Okay, can you, anybody share with me what network? Fox, okay. Is there any other ones other than Fox? The Blaze, okay. How, a show of hands, talk radio is your major source of information. Can anybody give me some shows? Rush Limbaugh, Mark Levin, American Family Association. Anybody else? Anything else?
The Power Hour.
Michael Savage. Dan Koval.
The Power Hour.
The Power Hour. David Webb. Does anybody listen to Mark Davis? Okay. Alex Jones. Okay, WorldNet Daily. Okay, very good. Show of hands. How many of you get the bulk of your information from websites? Okay, can I have a few shout outs on which websites? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, in the back? InfoWars. David Horowitz. Red Stake. Breitbart, Drudge. Breitbart and Drudge. Anybody else?
What really happened, Micro
Fox Nation. Washington Times.
And Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal. Politico.
National Patriot.
National Patriot.
Source documents via WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks. Okay. Are there any others? Anybody else getting their information from another source?
Conservatives for Palin.
Conservatives for Palin. Heritage Action.
Hot Air.
Hot Air.
New American Magazine.
American Spectator.
The New American Magazine.
The New American Magazine. Okay. Very good. All right. Okay, that's the first one. Staying informed. Your second I is influence. We all have our circles of influence. We've got circles of influence with families and friends. Some of us think the way we do, and some of them don't. There's also strangers you come into contact with. There's little comments you can make with people who you may not know where they stand politically. For example, right after Obama was elected the first time, I took my daughter to see her piano teacher, who also goes to my church. And she said, "Boy, you look upset." And I said, "I'm just really upset about the results of the election." And she goes, "Oh, no, this is going to be a good thing." And I looked at her, and I said, "Can I ask you where you get your news?" And she said, "CNN." And I thought, there you go. But then I had an opportunity to say to her, "Well, did you know that 95% of the mainstream media votes for the same political party? Are you really sure you're getting the whole story?" So I planted the seeds of doubt in her mind with that one little comment and question. You can do the same. You can have influence. How many of you here have family and friends that are out of state? Okay, did you know that you could go to don'tfundit.com and look and see where the senators stand, the Republican senators stand on the cloture vote for tomorrow? You can go and look. You can see if they're confirmed to vote yes, confirmed to vote no, or question mark. If you have friends in Tennessee, both of those senators, I believe, are still on the fence last time I looked. Both of the Republican senators in Mississippi. Okay? Do you have any friends in Georgia? What about somebody, Tom Coburn? Anybody, relatives in Arizona or Arkansas? You've got some red state Democrats that are up for re-election. Okay, so this is the way you can do. You can maybe shoot them a little Facebook tonight and said, "Hey, have you contacted your congressman? Did you know this is what he's up to, or this is where he stands? How about posting on his Facebook tonight?" You can also go to the same website, don'tfundit.com. You can get their Facebook, their Twitter, their DC number, and their state phone numbers. Okay, you can leave voicemail tonight and that kind of thing. Every way you can contact these people is on that website. Yes? He has turned off his phone, but he still has a staff, evidently, that's looking at Facebook and Twitter? No? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He actually advised someone today to just turn off their phone. I don't know exactly who he was speaking to. McConnell did. Okay, in fact, yeah, fax is another way you can do it. Cornyn's has been off and on for a long time. I did hear of someone that got through to him today and spoke to a staffer, but I have been tweeting Senator Cornyn today. In fact, I wanted to let you know that he's actually asking questions of his constituents today on Twitter and on Facebook. Here are two of Senator Cornyn's questions to his constituents, and he's actually soliciting some responses. Okay, here's the first one. Killing the House defunded bill would not kill Obamacare, just the opposite. Why would I vote against a bill I am for? That is his question on Twitter. Second one, just asking, how many of you are for shutting down the government even if it doesn't defund Obamacare? I responded to his posts with, I am, exclamation point. I'm for shutting down the government. Don't fear it. The last time we did it, we picked up 2 seats in the Senate. What are you afraid of? Just do the right thing. These are the ways you can get in touch with these people. So what, he turned off his phone. He's got staffers looking at this because he's got staffers posting them.
So
all right?
You said that he confirmed that he is for Obamacare?
He is, as of the Don't Fund It website, Cornyn is a yes on cloture.
Well, no, I'm saying you said his tweet said what again? I wanted to double check that.
I'm saying, ask that
You
again.
said his first tweet you were.
No, it's just, he's posting it on Twitter, but you can respond to his post.
Yeah, but you said, why would I defund the bill that I'm for?
Yes, he said that.
So does that mean he's for Obamacare, or what does that mean he's for?
He's saying by voting against cloture, it's like, this is the little trick they're trying to play. By voting against cloture, it's like you're voting against the House bill. He's for the House bill. But see, we know the game.
Yeah.
Okay? We know the game. So let him know that. Tweet back or get on his Facebook, same questions on the Facebook page, and say, we know what the game is. We know that if you vote for cloture, you're giving Harry Reid the power to take the vote threshold from 60 down to simple majority of 51. Okay? And to strip that defunded language right out of that thing. Yes?
I will share with you that I have been calling Cornyn multiple times a day for the last week and have not been able to get through but 2 or 3 times. As I was sitting there making that comment to my mother, she said, he's blocked your phone. I said, that's ridiculous. I picked up her phone, I got right through.
Okay. All right, so here's another strategy. Here's another strategy. I have 2 teenage daughters. They are not 18 yet, but I can take their cell phones and call. All they ask for is your name and your zip code. They do live in my zip code, and they do have my last name. So I, use different phones. Go to a payphone if you want to.
Can I share my
Yeah.
conversation? I spoke with one of the staffers in John Cornyn's office on Monday. His name was Ben. I asked Ben, I want to know how Senator John Cornyn stands on Obamacare. Ben's response was, I don't know.
Yes, I heard the same guy.
Let me go through the wall.
Yeah.
I said, did you tell me who you are? He identified himself as one of the staffers. I said, do you work for Senator Cornyn? He said, yes, I do. I said, if you're telling me that you have no idea how he stands on Obamacare, one of the major issues that we have right now, and he said, no, ma'am. I said, well, you know what? That makes me even angry that you are working with him and that you have no clue. And I don't know what you guys are doing up there in Washington. And I told him, I said, let me tell you who I am. Let me tell you that I've got 40,000 patients, and let me tell you that I'm going to tell every single one of them that Senator Cornyn is not representing them.
Yep.
I did not get a response. Did not do that, but I then got blocked.
Oh, man. I spoke to the same young gentleman and called him first thing in the morning. He says, I have not had a chance yet to talk to the senator, and I don't know where his position is. Yeah, I was told in July, though, that the reason that he was against the defund back even then was that he was not in favor of a government shutdown. And I said, what's so bad about a government shutdown? And he goes, the military won't get paid. And I said, that is not true. Because Social Security checks won't go out. And I said, you're lying to me. So, I mean, you got to set these people straight. Okay. Yeah, multiple phones, multiple phone calls. Okay, here's another way. We're still on influence real quick. Let me give these to you. Low information voters, they're all around us. We are not them because we're here tonight, but they are all around us. How do you speak to a low information voter? Slowly. Okay, here's my advice. Let me tell you a little bit story about me going car shopping. I'm a low information car shopper. Why? Because I don't know how a car works, and I don't really care. And after the guy showed me the car I purchased, he said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Yeah, where's the drink holder?" I am a low information car purchaser. That's okay. The people around you may be low information Obamacare people. They don't know how it works, they don't know a lot about it, but they all want to know where the drink holder is. So tell them, what's the drink holder with Obamacare? It could be the cost. We just can't afford this right now. It's so expensive. That might be their nerve. Or what if it's this? What if it's loss of privacy? That's a nerve. Rationing, death panels. Keeping your doctor. The plain don't care. Everybody has their nerve. Well, the thing is, you can't tell them how the engine works, though, if they're low information voters. Just give them the one thing that might be their button issue. Yeah, I might understand that nothing's free. Yep. Okay, so here's your last I. We've got stay informed, be an influencer, and here's the last I. I think you're going to really like this one. I want you to irritate your congressman and your senator. I want you to irritate them. I want you to irritate their staff. I want you to irritate anybody that's affiliated with their offices until they listen to us and represent us to Washington. It's not their job to represent Washington, D.C. to us. It's their job to represent us to Washington, D.C. We need to make them listen. So if you haven't done it, any show hands real quick. Has anybody signed the petition at don'tfundit.com? Who has signed that petition? Who has signed it electronically? Sign the petition. Okay, if you haven't, you can also do it by phone. You don't even have to break out the computer for this one. Go ahead and take out your phone right now and put this number in. You can call it later if you want. But this is a way to sign the petition with a phone number. You can go ahead and put it in your phone. Here, are you ready? It's 1-800-383-4547. 1-800-383-4547. We've got the vote coming up tomorrow, the cloture vote. We can irritate them this evening on Facebook. We can irritate them on Twitter. We can irritate their voicemails. We can email. However you choose to do it, but the nighttime still works. Ted Cruz proved that. Yeah. They were sleeping while he was wasting time. What kind of argument is that? Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay, very good. Okay, what you have is you have a 60 vote threshold. If the senators go in and he asks for cloture, if they vote no, there must be a 60 vote threshold in order to change the House bill. The House bill that's attached to the continuing resolution has a defund Obamacare amendment attached to it. All right? That's the only thing. Fund the whole government, just don't fund that. It would take 60 votes. If Harry Reid is denied cloture, if we can get 41 senators to say, you can't have it, it will take 60 votes then for him to strip the defunding language out of the continuing resolution. But if we give him cloture, if we say, yes, you can have cloture, we'll end debate, then he only needs a simple majority of 51 to strip the funding. All it takes is 41 senators. We have 46. Why we can't get 46 senators to stand together on this, I'm not sure, but according to Cornyn's own words, It's because they're afraid of the government shutdown. So maybe that's one of the things you can irritate them with tonight. Don't be afraid of the shutdown. We will have your back. We will not blame you. Go ahead, do it. We dare you. He was reading it to his daughters at their bedtime. Yes, he was. Yes, sir.
I hate to ask you this question this way, but how much help do you really think these petitions and so on, and these telephone numbers
I'll let you know.
really do?
I'll let you know. Last Friday, the House voted to defund Obamacare. A week before that, they weren't. What happened? What was the difference? They heard from us. In huge numbers. Ted Cruz was even actually pleasantly surprised by that development. Everyone told him it was impossible. I'm not willing to give up on this yet. Ever since it passed, I don't feel like I can breathe. I will not exhale completely until this law is repealed or defunded. Wait, one more quick. Let this guy speak real quick. Yes, sir. In the corner. Go ahead and play. Yeah.
The House of Representatives, up until a week ago, said we can't defund Obamacare. I asked
That's true.
He said we can't.
Yeah, they said there's all this mandatory spending inside the bill. We can't defund it. And now Boehner's like, well, I just passed a bill saying we could. So that argument is dead and gone. Why? They heard from us. Yeah. Well, you know what? Why don't you guys, those of you who watch Fox, why don't you tell them to stop putting them on? All right? Irritate. That's our favorite I, right? Irritate. Inform, influence, irritate. Are we about, do you have any more time? Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
How can you expect people that wrote that bill to be intelligent when they say they give their opposition 21 hours on national TV and you ran the thing to the gander and they say it's a waste of time? No, they give you 21 hours, all free, to speak to the entire nation. Now, how smart is that?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think what's happened, I'll put a little bow around this. I think what happened on Tuesday night and into Wednesday was we had a human being become a line. He became the line in the sand. And on one side, it's not even Democrat and Republican anymore. What we have is a human being that became a line, and on one side we have the elected elite in Washington, D.C., and what we have on the other side is the people of the United States of America. That's what's happened. And how do we know that there's Democrats and Republicans on the other side? Well, when Harry Reid asked Ted Cruz if John McCain could have 15 minutes of the floor, that's how you know. We don't have two parties anymore. Okay, so God bless you all. Keep fighting. Do not give up and irritate the heck out of these guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Carrie. She'll be back in a minute to talk about the NSC, the problems there. Just for fun on the lightning round, how many times has the government been shut down? You know how many? 17 times. We're still here. Isn't that amazing? It was shut down 8 times under Ronald Reagan.
In any of those 17
This is not the end of the world.
Can you let us know if any of those 17 times was anything essential not funded? As far as I know, that is a zero, that all essential functions continued in every single case. Is that?
Yeah, all essential functions, even under a shutdown, continue to be funded. And then there's a certain amount of discretion in the White House as to what they fund after that. But no, there were no essential services that were cut off.
The military got paid, all the things
Yeah.
they're about.
Right. Well, so it's also the Republican leadership scare tactic. Okay. We're going to talk just for a minute. By the way, what do you do when you have an employee who doesn't want to listen to you or tells you things about your business that are simply untrue? Yeah, that does seem to be the right solution sometimes. And that may be what has to happen here. Hopefully, maybe our congressman will listen and take some of this to heart. That's what an employee review is all about. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about illegal immigration and amnesty. Now, it's a really complex topic, so I'm going to cover it in a really simple, high-level, fairly quick manner, I hope. And the first one is sort of a high-level perspective. What's it all about? Pete himself has actually stated publicly on many occasions that the engine that drives this whole immigration amnesty thing, what makes it seem so important to cross this bridge and solve it right now, has nothing to do with the Hispanic community. It has to do with the Muslims. And everyone in Washington knows that's the dirty little secret. It's all about Muslims. And if you don't understand that what's going on in the Middle East and the chaos that our president is creating over there, if you don't understand that that is linked to the urgency over here to pass amnesty, then you haven't really sat back and looked at this. Now, how many people know how we figure out who is a refugee that would get amnesty status? Anybody know who gets to decide that right now for the United States? The United Nations. We have outsourced, I'm serious, we have outsourced the decision making as to who gets designated as a refugee to the United Nations. And I'll give you another hint. If you're a Syrian Christian, you need not apply. So you have to understand that there is a link between this seeming idiocy that's going on in the Middle East with our president and this urgency to do something about immigration, because it is going to create millions, if not millions and millions of Muslim refugees to come here. And I'm not speaking out against Muslims, I'm just telling you geopolitically what's going on. So you need to realize that is a lot of what is driving this debate. In Libya, and now apparently in Syria, the president has quite possibly acted outside of his constitutional authority. And yet Congress has failed in its duty to check him. Let's talk about that, because that's a problem. The president has acted entirely out of his constitutional authority when he has decided not to enforce certain immigration laws. He has no constitutional authority to say, I just don't want to enforce that law. But the Congress didn't call him on it. There is no legal paper. The Department of Justice in the past has written certain legal justifications where presidents decided not to enforce part of the law on constitutional grounds. The president has no constitutional ground here. There has been no Department of Justice determination. So the president has acted extra constitutionally, in other words, outside of the Constitution, and the Congress, whose job it is to check him, has not done so. And as a result, the president has made the immigration problem seem more terribly pressing than it is. And it has bolstered the idea that the president can act as monarch, bypassing this Congress and the rule of law at will. In all of these topics we've been hitting tonight, again, remember, at the bottom of these is the violation of the rule of law. And the rule of law is what is supposed to make all of us on a level playing field. It's what makes us free to transact in win-win type things as opposed to win-lose. Obamacare is win-lose. Make no mistake about it. It is win-lose. I've had a business in England for 18 years. It is so ugly what happens to the medicine there. I got an ENT over here at Presby. I said, how's business? He said, great. I said, really? I said, well, is it the insurance deal or what? I said, no, it's the Canadians coming down. He says, I got a great practice here. Probably a third of my practice right now is Canadians coming down here because they have no health care in Canada. Wow. Okay. So we have a rule of law problem in the immigration amnesty deal. The president has acted illegally. The Congress has not stopped him. We now have a problem going on over in the Middle East, and that is driving potential refugees here for which we no longer get to define a refugee. Let's get down to the working level. What could happen? Well, unfortunately, Speaker Boehner has been very clear that he's okay with amnesty, as long as some fig leaf can be constructed to give the Republicans cover. And remember, any immigration-related bill that is passed by the House, anyone, no matter how wonderful it is, will then have to go to a conference committee of the Senate and the House. Who appoints the House members that goes to a conference committee? Right, John Boehner. You think he's going to appoint somebody that's going to be okay with amnesty to go to that? I'd say it's a pretty easy bet, if you could get somebody to bet against you. So it's extremely likely that any immigration bill, good, bad, or indifferent, that gets passed in this session is going to go to conference committee, and it's going to come back from the conference committee with the Gang of Eight amnesty. That is what will be put in front of the House that they'll then have to vote on, and there is going to be huge arm twisting about that. Now, we met with Pete a bunch of times, and after lots of badgering, he finally agreed that he would apply what's called the Hastert rule. Now, the Hastert rule is kind of an agreement. It's an informal principle, really, that Republican speakers have used since the mid-1990s. And what it does is it limits the power of the minority to bring up bills. And it works like this. Pete would have to, in order to apply the Hastert rule, would have to get all the Republicans together and say, are we for it? And if a majority of Republicans won't be for it, then Pete will keep it from coming forth through the Rules Committee. That is called the Hastert rule. Pete says any bill that comes back from a conference committee, he will apply the Hastert rule to. He didn't say it readily, but he finally said it. And I think we would all have to say, gut check time, do we think that's what's going to happen when the going gets tough and Boehner gets upset? Don't know. Everybody's got to make that decision for themselves. But there is one still problem, and that is that there's something called a discharge petition. Everybody know what that is? Okay. Discharge petition basically says an absolute majority, which in this case means 218 congressmen, can vote for something, and it overrides what Pete can do in the Rules Committee. So, right, it trumps anything Pete can do to block it. So, what do the numbers look like? Well, you need 218 congressmen, and there's 201 Democrats. So you have to have faith that Nancy Pelosi can't find just 17 Republicans. Now, you start naming Olympia Snow. Point is, you can come in and you can find those 17 Republicans that would probably be willing to do something like that. So the odds are that even if Pete applied the Hastert rule, said he would, maybe he would, the odds are that you'd have a discharge petition, and on the floor of the House of Representatives, they will be faced with an immigration bill with amnesty. And that is the problem. Now, how will they get that through on the floor? Well, one way is that they'll put some fig leaves on it. They'll say, oh, but we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do this. Problem with that is we have a president who's already said, I'm only going to enforce certain things in the immigration that I like. And the Congress has already let him get away with it. So anything they put in this bill to make you and I feel comfortable The president will sign into law if he can get it through the House, and then he will simply not enforce it. And the Congress will not hold his feet to the fire. Because the fundamental problem we have here is that the rule of law is being ignored and the Congress is letting it go on. That's right. It's pure lawlessness. So that's kind of the story on illegal immigration and amnesty. We could take just a couple of questions if you want, but I don't want to spend a lot of time because we're running behind and we do want to get to the NSA. Yes.
Very quickly, I'm apologizing. This is back to healthcare. John Cornyn has gone from a yes on cloture to a maybe. He wants to hear from as many precinct chairs as he can. So if you go to his webpage, if you're a precinct chair, Larry, go to his webpage and send him a webmail. He's waffling. He's hearing from us. It's working. So he's gone from a yes, I will vote to cloture to so get on it, precinct chairs.
Larry, not only that, but since you've got the list of all the precinct chairs, you ought to be emailing this out to all of them tonight. Yes, Ken.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide some. We had a long meeting with Pete Sessions' staff on this issue, and his staff made very clear that Pete is on board with the idea of passing an immigration bill, and we tried to explain to them that any immigration bill carries with it a huge amount of liability, a huge amount of risk, as Russ just explained. And they just, you would have thought we were speaking a foreign language. They just refused to hear it. They kept going back to, but we can pass some border security things, we can do, and we kept telling them, look, Obama's gonna ignore all that. There's no point in this. There's no good thing that can come out of this. And they just would not hear what we had to say. We finally, as a group, and there were about 15 of us, we finally said, look, we don't want any bill. We don't want any bill. This is not the time. This is not the environment for an immigration bill. And he said, I'll report that to the congressman. And we never heard a peep back after that. Yeah. Yeah, I could do that, or I could go over there and talk to that wall, and it'll do about as much good. Maybe I'm a cynic, but...
One more quick comment. We already have immigration laws. We already have them on the books. They're not being enforced. Why write a new law that won't be enforced either?
That's the problem. And what are they going to promise you in that law that they will then not enforce? And that's really the whole problem. We're really talking about a breakdown of trust in the Congress and the administration because we've had a breakdown in their willingness to enforce the rule of law. We're into the rule of man in this country now. And that's a terrifying thing because that's the old primitive mindset. They call it progressivism, but it's not. It's a very ancient win-lose mindset. It's very, very primitive. Yes, ma'am.
I want to make two comments. One is that there are a lot of American citizens that are children born to people that are foreign. The wealthy people of Dubai, Africa, anywhere, come over here, send their wives over the last month of pregnancy to have their children, and they become citizens. So we have a lot of American citizens whose parents are not. So they use that as an excuse or whatever. And another thing I wanted to say was it took Spain 700 years to get the Muslims out of their country. Do we want to wait 700 years to bring our country back to what it should be?
It's interesting, in talking to some of the immigration people, roughly 80% of the admittances to this country are relatives of one anchor baby. Only about 10% of the actual visas, somewhere between 8 and 10% of the actual visas and work permits that are here stem from qualified people who have waited in line and gotten it and worked for it and come here and are high technical skill people, kind of people that we're looking for. People who are coming here for a better way of life and wanting to work for it and highly trained to do that. The rest of it is way out of control because you get an anchor baby and then you get a sister and then her two brothers and then the mom and then the grandmother, and they can all do a chain and come in, and that's the whole danger of amnesty. It turns into a huge cascade. Okay, since we're running a little late, Carrie, would you like to address the NSA and surveillance? And then we'll wrap up.
Well, I don't have a ton on that. I spent all day looking at healthcare, but I will say this. There is a nerve when you're talking to people about the NSA. It has come up. I don't know if you're a late night talk show. This is coming up culturally in the pop culture arena. Is this loss of privacy? That is a real nerve issue with the NSA and the surveillance. Jay Leno made a joke and he says people always ask DC to listen. Well, believe me, they're listening now. So he's making jokes about it. And I don't know, who in here watched Miss America pageant a week ago Sunday? Did anybody watch the Miss America pageant? These girls were in Atlantic City, and they did a little pre-recorded where they went out to scenic places and they were introducing themselves, and there was a cute little tagline about their state. The girl from Vermont said, I may be lactose intolerant, but Ben and Jerry are my two favorite guys. I'm so-and-so from Vermont. You know, they're being cute and funny. The girl that was Miss District of Columbia said, listening to your phone calls from the nation's capital. Okay? Just kidding. And then she introduced herself and said where she was from. This has hit a nerve. If this is the first line that comes into this 20-something's mind when she talks about where she's from, which is the nation's capital, this has hit a cultural nerve. It is also, it ties back, this loss of privacy ties back into Obamacare. Why? Because of the IRS being part of the implementation and the enforcement of Obamacare. Have you seen this new questionnaire you're going to have to fill out to be part of Obamacare? They're going to ask you your sexual history, how many partners you've had. Okay, do you really want a federal database in the era of Snowden to contain your sexual partner history? I'm just saying, if you're talking to a young person, this privacy is huge. It's a huge issue. It is one of these issues where we can talk to low information voters and know exactly where that nerve is and to plant those seeds of doubt. Just simple questions with them. Do you really want your personal medical history? It doesn't even have to be sexual. Medical history. Do you want your sensitive medical information being part of a database? And who are the people who have control over that data? Is our government doing a good job of vetting people lately? What about the people that vetted, the Navy Yard? Vetted the guy that shot up everybody, Aaron. Who vetted that guy? Who's vetting these people that have control over this information? We have every reason in the world to be suspicious, to be upset, to be cautious, and I would suggest to anyone who is being asked, if you're faced with some kind of questionnaire, I haven't done it yet. Has anyone done it? Show of hands. Had any kind of gone to the doctor and had to fill out any kind of information?
Well, it's not just Obamacare, it's also the Census Bureau.
The Census Bureau, this kind of thing. I had a friend go to the doctor, and every time she answered a question, another menu would come up, and it would take her to another page. She said it took her 45 minutes to fill this thing out at her doctor's office. So what I personally have done, is I have simply told the staff I'm a fee-for-service patient, and I would prefer not to fill out any forms. I will pay you cash because I have a catastrophic only. I will pay cash, and I usually get 40 to 50% off every time I do. And that way there's no forms involved. And you can be honest about it. Say, I just do not. What if this woman voted for Obama that's, filling out these forms? Just say, I'm not comfortable with the government having my private information. I don't know who these people are. Okay, so this loss of privacy, I'm sorry I don't know more about the NSA to tell you tonight. Like I said, Obamacare kind of sucked up all my oxygen over the last couple of days. But anyway, Ken knows way more than I do. Ken, do you have anything you want to add or say?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
He can talk for a long time about that. Come on up, Ken.
Ken, you might, I think it's worthwhile to at least address the FISA courts and the fact that they're wholly unconstitutional according to Article 3. I don't know if that's where you're going to go with this or not, but it's as good a place as any.
Yeah, I hadn't really prepared anything, but I can talk to you a little bit about it just because it's an issue that I'm personally very interested in. And what the biggest problem with the current surveillance program, the entire set of surveillance programs, is that by law we're not allowed to know what they are. The only way that we've learned anything about them is through leaks and through some missteps and some whistleblowers that we even found out anything. Russ just mentioned the FISA court. The FISA court actually issues secret opinions. You talk about the rule of law. One of the ideas underlying the rule of law is that any of us should be able to determine what the law is so we can know what we're allowed to do or not allowed to do, etc. A long time ago they said, well, ignorance of the law is no excuse. But in order for ignorance of the law to not be an excuse, you have to have the ability for you to go and find out what the law is, and the law can put a burden on you to go find that out. But when the law is actually secret, that is Banana Republic, Stalinist kind of stuff. When you have law that you can't know what it is, and you have a government that is surveilling you, and the government is reaching out to telecom companies, to companies like Google, companies like Yahoo that are collecting information. When they request information, by law, they include in there, by the way, this request itself is secret. By law, you cannot disclose that we made this request for information. This is the problem. And when Clapper, our Director of National Intelligence, was asked in a congressional hearing under oath whether or not these things were going on, he just blatantly lied. He later admitted, yeah, I just didn't tell the truth. I just said something that I thought would not be, I forget the language he used, it was Clintonian, the way that he described it, but I said the least false thing or something, of the things I was thinking of, it was the least false thing or something like it. But we don't even know what so there are programs, I will just about guarantee you, we know of some of these programs. We know of these bulk collection programs that are just, it's like a vacuum on the internet. They just plug into it and they just grab everything. It doesn't matter whether or not you're under any kind of an investigation. It doesn't matter whether you're identified as a terrorist or organized crime or anything like that. It just grabs everything. So when you send an email, when you go to a website, when you make an online purchase, all these things are going into a database and being stored. For those of you like myself, I would be there's no point in me denying I'm a gun owner or trying to hide the fact. So I'm not going to be secret about that. But some folks that are gun owners, for good reason, don't like for everybody to know that, and particularly don't like for the federal government to know that they're a gun owner or what kind of guns they own or how many, etc. Well, with this kind of information, and the NRA just identified this, with this kind of information, the government can very easily determine what types of ammo you buy. They can determine how often you go to the gun range, if ever. They can determine what websites you go to, if you're going to NRA.org or Gun Owners of America or some website to buy ammo or guns. They can determine all of that with this information. So with that kind of metadata, that's what it's called, metadata, they can very easily determine, they can run an analysis, and it'll just it can put little pinpoints on every household that identifies as being a gun owner, and could probably do a pretty good guess at figuring out what kind of guns you own and how many. It wouldn't be too hard. And so we've fought in the gun rights community, we've fought for decades against the federal government being able to know what we owned and what we had, who we were. And now this NSA program comes along, and they're going to be able to determine all of that. And so I'm glad to see that the NRA has finally acknowledged this, and they've actually joined the lawsuit against these NSA surveillance programs, because they recognize now that this program will allow them to identify the gun owners and identify all kinds of things about them. In fact, they can track your cell phone everywhere it goes. They can determine, like, you remember Family Circus where they show the little boy go all over they can do that with your cell phone, and they can show everywhere you've gone. And I don't know if it's true or not. I've heard that even if your cell phone is off, it doesn't even have to be on, they can determine it. Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. And so here's the thing. We know these things. These are the things we've found out about. But the only way that we found out about them is by some leaks, as I said, and some whistleblowers. There's almost guaranteed to be other things that we don't even know about. So here's kind of the lay of the land right now. And this is particular to Congressman Sessions in Congressional District 32. There's a group of folks in the House and Senate, and not enough of them yet, but there are some of them that have been listening to their constituents. They understand the problems, and they've been working on opening up more transparency and also dialing back these ideas. If you're familiar with the Constitution, you know that the Constitution says warrants shall not issue except on probable cause, and then and they're specific as to the places and things to be searched. This is what they call warrantless surveillance. There's no warrant required. They don't think they need one anymore. Well, what a guy named Justin Amash, he's a young congressman, and some others have gotten together and they've started pushing back on this, and they've started saying, look, if you're going to investigate, if you're going to grab this information, you need to have a warrant. You need to be able to tell me, why this guy that you're grabbing his information, why he's a problem. Now, you don't have to prove it as if you prove a crime, but you have to have some probable cause that he's doing something. You got to have something to show that he's doing something wrong. Enough to make it legitimate to get a warrant. And so they try to do that. They try to pass that through the Congress. Amash got it to the floor, and it almost passed. It came to within a few votes of passing. And so that's why it's important to know what our congressman did, because our congressman voted against that. And our congressman voted to continue the warrantless blanket surveillance that the NSA is doing. He was actually challenged on this by some of the activists, by Regina and some of the activists, and he said, his answer, and I'm going to paraphrase, but he basically said, yes, I absolutely voted against that because I am in favor of things that are reasonable and things that will work. And if you talk to Congressman Amash, he would tell you that that was a meaningless thing. I actually called Amash's office and I said, oh, so, was this a meaningless bill that you, and they said, no, this was very serious, something we take very seriously, and we considered it very meaningful, or else we wouldn't have done it. So our government is snooping into everything you do, and our congressman, who's supposed to be defending us, is actually standing with them and against the ones that are trying to dial this back. So he needs to hear about that, and he needs to. And by the way, whatever, I know there's talk about replacing Pete Sessions, and I want to remind everybody as to why these town halls and why getting him to town halls are important, because no matter what might happen in an election between now and November of next year, Pete Sessions is our congressman until January of 2015. Okay, so he will be voting on our behalf for a long time yet, no matter what happens in an upcoming election. So although if you support a primary challenger, do that, but also keep in mind we have to keep the pressure up because he's going to be our employee. You don't get to give him a pink slip until January of 2015, and that's a long ways off. So so that's what I've got. I guess do we have time for some questions? Or okay, we can take a question or two. I guess I must have covered it all.
Speak up.
Thanks, everybody.
There's one here. Do you have a question?
Go to the microphone.
Sir, you need to speak up if you're going to ask a question.
Would you address the potential changes to the FISA court? One of them being that they're proposing to require a public advocate to be there when the judge is being presented the case by the government?
I'm a little bit familiar with some of those proposals, and that would be a change in the right direction. A lot of us are really curious as to why the FISA court opinions would need to be private. They could redact or secret. They could redact a lot of the information as far as what companies and things if they felt they needed to. But it's really curious to me, and I think inappropriate that the FISA court issues opinions that we're not even allowed to read the broad outlines of what's being done. I don't think there's any reason or explanation or any defense of that. Is that it? All right. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, in conclusion, In every one of these issues that we've talked about tonight, whether it's what's going on in Benghazi, whether it's Obamacare and the defunding of it and its whole deal, I mean, it came in illegally. Whether it's immigration and amnesty, whether it's surveillance. All of these issues, what is at stake is the rule of law and whether this Congress is going to hold the administration accountable to it. The problem is that the Congress in this country is now at risk of making itself irrelevant by not holding this president accountable to the rule of law. And that is the Congress's job. That is absolutely the Congress's job. You know, in 1933 in Germany, they were having a lot of problems, and Hitler went from chancellor and took over. And the Reichstag basically passed a deal called the Enabling Act of 1933. And that was an act that said for 4 years they would allow Hitler to rule by executive order. Four years later, when the bill had expired, everybody was so used to the president ruling by executive order that nobody paid any attention to the Reichstag. They had an election in 1938, brought in new guys, and by 1941, the Reichstag voted to just completely disband. They were irrelevant. And yet, constitutionally, they were supposed to be a major part of the government. That is the danger when we have representatives that are afraid to stand up for our rights, they are afraid to stand up for the rule of law, and they are afraid to stand up to this administration or the media. Ted Cruz is exactly right. We can take this deal back. We are taking this deal back. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort. You have to do things one at a time. And some of our congressmen are going to listen and come around, and some of them aren't. And I don't know where Pete is. I've tried a lot. I have really tried a lot. But like Ken, I haven't gotten the impression he's listening. I hope he's listening tonight. I hope he's listening tonight. So, it's also one last thing I want to make a note about. You know, when you have an employee and he tells you something, you really want to have faith that it's not misleading, that he's not playing games with you. One of the most interesting comments Ted Cruz made in his 21-hour deal, he said, you know, jobs are the biggest issue in this country. It's what's killing us. And since I have come to Washington, we haven't spent 1 hour on the floor of the Senate deliberating what to do about jobs. Not a single hour since he's been to Washington. But he said, you know, I've been in a lot of meetings and caucuses about, well, what kind of a show vote can we do that'll make them happy at home? Some of you probably heard that comment. Fascinating. That's what we've had with these 38 or however many worthless votes that the House has taken to get rid of Obamacare. This defunding deal is the first time it's gotten serious. This is the first time when we're down to the lick log and we're finding out who's blowing smoke at us with show votes and who is really serious about it. And Pete needs to hear that. Boehner needs to hear that. Cantor needs to hear that. I think they did hear it. But it's getting ready to go back to their ballpark. because I don't think that the Senate is going to stop this. It's going to go back to their ballpark. And at that point, there is a strategy. As I said, just fund one entity at a time and pass them along. There is a strategy if the House has the guts to do it. There is no reason to buy into this shutdown business. As I said, 17 times previously, the government has shut down and we all still seem to be here. So, Pete needs to hear this. If he hears it from you enough, it will potentially make a difference. Yes, Carrie?
I forgot to mention that they are whipping votes in the House to attach a number of items, including things like the Keystone Pipeline, et cetera, to the debt ceiling. And Gomert was on Hannity this afternoon saying, he's thinking they're not going to get the votes for the debt ceiling at this point in time, but because even though the House leadership's calling it the 1-2 punch, let's let the one go first and let's let the two go later. Let's keep the debt ceiling out of this for now. That deadline's not until, I believe, October 15th. And let's focus on the CR in front of us right now so that we'll have something in case this doesn't go the way we would like to. So Pete has a hand in this. Pete needs to hear from us. Tell him, focus on the CR. They can do, even if this comes back from the Senate, if the House simply says, we're putting that language right back in and sends it back, then we keep this thing going. The defund strategy, they're already it's already morphed from defund to delay. But you know what delay says? Just give us time to fix this. You know what? Delay the individual mandate for a year, and then it'll roll out a whole lot better once we have some more time. Why do we want to help them look good? We don't. So tell him, don't focus on delay, focus on defund, leave the debt ceiling debate for October. That's what you can tell Pete. Thank you.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Okay, so we really come tonight to 4 questions for Pete. The first one is, Pete Sessions, will you immediately expend all of your efforts to allow a floor vote on the question of appointing a select committee to get to the bottom of Benghazi, determine what laws were broken or what dereliction of duty was committed, and who should answer at law for any illegality in these actions? The first thing that comes to mind is perjury. And we already know, we already know James Clapper has committed it. What's happened to him? Pete Sessions, will you promise to vote against any continuing resolution that doesn't defund Obamacare one way or the other? Whether it's a stand that you take that just takes the same bill you passed last Friday and sends it back to the Senate and says tough beans, or whether you go with the strategy that we're going to pass some military spending and then this spending and then one at a time and force them to show their hand, doesn't matter. Will you promise to vote against any continuing resolution that doesn't defund Obamacare? Number 3, Pete Sessions, will you promise to stop any immigration bill or immigration-related bill from passing the House during the 113th Congress? Because we know we can't trust it, whatever it is, when it goes to the Joint Committee. And we know we can't trust the President to enforce any fig leaf legislation they put in there to try to make us comfortable. And we know the Congress won't make the President obey the law. Number 4, will you take action to restrict the surveillance of individuals to those under active investigation or for which there is probable cause of wrongdoing? That's really what it all boils down to. You know, we really can't wait. One of the favorite ideas they tried to blow smoke at us for a while with Obamacare was, well, we just really got to have the Senate. Gentlemen, if you hadn't got the guts controlling the House, why should we vote for you to take the Senate? Why would we think you have any more guts then? Unless you tell me you're going to get a veto-proof majority, which is not going to happen. That means you have to take the White House. That means Obamacare will be here, funded, in place, people operating, institutions built, everything going for 3 years. I will tell you, it's going to be hard to end it then. So the time to act is now, and the time to stay with it is now. I know it's been a while. Management urges a vote for yes to all these 4 questions. And this is contact info for Pete Sessions. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. God love you. This is what makes America a wonderful place. Thank you.